Hello all, and welcome to Texas, the series where I review and take on each installment in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre saga. On tonight's episode, I take on the remake, brought to us by the now infamous Platinum Dunes. The really interesting thing about the remake is it had about as much of an impact on horror, well, almost as much of an impact on horror as the original did. The remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre was really one of the first Platinum Dunes films, and it was so successful and made them so much money that company ended up making just remakes, and that's all they did, and they became infamous for it. Their logo of a giant desert became symbolic of the original ideas they had. None. They just made so much money off of this, they just tried to replicate it at every turn. And because this one company was pumping out nothing but remakes, it soon ensued a massive remake boom, which we're still feeling today in a lot of genres of movies, but mostly and primarily horror. Remakes here, remakes everywhere, and it all came from really this movie. Now, stating that, you would think a lot of people might dislike this movie because of what it came to bring about, but this is definitely, without question, one of the better remakes. Now, if you're curious as to what is better, the original or remake, it's the original. Of course it's the original. Why would you even ask that question? It's the original. Just leave. Just leave. But the remake is still, in my opinion, the third best in the series, right behind the original and part 4, because I love it. What makes the remake so effective is the situation. Yes, it's the exact same plot from the original, because it's a remake, but in this one, our main heroes get stuck in the cannibals' crossfires because they bump into a woman that kills herself, and they decide to report it to the police. This is something that I would really hope that anyone would do. They basically had two options: report the crime to police or dump her body. I would hope no one would dump her body. Reporting it to the police was an extremely understandable and extremely relatable move. Anyone would do that. And because they report to the police, they get in the cannibals' crossfires and all of them become in jeopardy. That's why they get in danger. Often in horror movies, the main characters get into danger because they went to somewhere they weren't supposed to go, or they did something they weren't supposed to do. They made an obvious mistake that most people wouldn't make. Most people wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't go in the haunted house. These people did a arguably silly thing, and then they got their arguable comeuppance. A lot of people say that horror movies are old-timey, like fairy tales about people getting their comeuppances. That's arguable, but anyways, the difference here is the characters do something very understandable, very relatable, and something that you would see yourself doing. Everyone would think, I should go to the cops. There's a person that just killed themselves. This is serious. And that's what gets them in jeopardy. That's what gets their lives on the line. Trying to do the right thing. Because of this interesting little plot point, it makes our hero characters extremely relatable. That and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series is at this point extremely well known, so we know for a fact all these characters are likely going to die horribly. And since they're relatable because they're doing something that hopefully anyone would do, we don't want to see them die. We want to see them live. We get really scared over the fact that these people are dying, and we could see ourselves doing the same thing they did. We would report someone killing themselves, of course we would. And then we would be stuck in the same situation. We fear it because it's completely and utterly relatable, which is why this movie works so well. That right there, making the characters extremely relatable, is what makes this movie work and work so well. It has really good, really strong heroes. It's also very well filmed. There's some neat camera work here and there. Not constant, but some really cool moves. And Leatherface, even though he's not done the way I like it, you know how I like it with him being a victim himself and forced to do what he does. Even though he's not done in that way, he still looks very impressive. The makeup for him is really well done. Also, the actors for the cannibals themselves are really at their top game. Some really good performances in this horror movie, I gotta say. Some very good performances. The gore is not extreme, but not light. It doesn't really hide anything. It's not scare of the unknown, but it's not really brutal either. The thing about this horror movie is it's not really scary and it's not really gory. It's more depressing. You have these main characters that you don't want to see get killed, and you know they're going to get killed, and you really relate to them, so you feel really sad throughout the whole movie. There's very few movies that try to make you feel sad, because sad isn't really a fun emotion. It feels sad. So there's barely any films that try to do this because it's so risky. And it's surprising how many times I've rewatched this movie because it has such a depressing feeling to it. It's not really a movie you'd think of wanting to rewatch because it's a downer. It really is a downer. At every opportunity, it makes you feel a little more sad. But because it's just so well made and so well executed, I keep coming back to it. As for cons, it's really hard to say any real cons. I know I say the original is far better and part 4 is far better, but that's because I like the ideas behind them. I really like the whole concept of the original Leatherface with the original, and I really like the concept of the mystery getting even more unclear with part 4. This one, the concepts aren't really as interesting, but there's nothing bad. There's nothing flaw that I can see. There's a few missteps with practical effects. I noticed in one scene there was a broken window and was completely shattered, and then when the camera went back to it, it was just slightly shattered. Then when the camera went back to it again, it was completely shattered again. So one or two missteps like that. But if I were to call out that stuff, I would make every movie sound atrocious, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to rate this movie a solid 9 out of 10. There's really no question why this started the remake boom, because it was a surprisingly good movie that literally everybody wanted to replicate and never quite pulled off. The reason why they never quite pulled it off is because they thought remakes were the key. They thought dingy film styling was the key, because this was filmed in a way where it was very dingy and gringy and that. They thought that was the key. They thought horror movies in general was the key. But no, what made this movie so good is that it decided to have relatable characters. And that was the key. And everybody just ignored that one very important element. And as a result, we got swamped with a lot of remakes, most of them being cash grabs, a couple of good ones, but most being cash grabs, especially from Platinum Dunes, the company that started it all in the first place. So yeah, you could argue that this movie caused a lot more harm than good, but it's still a great movie in its own right, so it still gets a 9 out of 10 for me. So, definitely a must watch. In my honest opinion, if you just want to go with the essentials, go with the first, part 4, and the remake. But I'm still going to watch the rest. This marathon is not over yet. Next time we take on the prequel, The Beginning.